$15,000 off new 2022 Ram 1500 SCA trucks. Bayou has new Ram inventory on our lot now with $15,000 off. All new Bayou Automotive vehicles come with a 1 million mile warranty. Shop BayouCDJR.com or visit us just off I-10 in LaPlace. If you need sales or service, the crew at Bayou is going to do right by you. $12,000 dealer discount, $3,000 rebate. All SCH Ram models in stock, expires 5/1/23.
Insurance companies often discourage people from getting an attorney. If I can't get you more, even after our fee, then you owe us nothing. Not even our costs. I'm Spencer Callahan. I'd like to help.
Spencer Callahan is the one to see. Call 387-2323.
LA 21-12670. Offices in Baton Rouge.
WNXX, Jackson, KNXX, Donaldsonville, and WDGL HD2 Baton Rouge. This hour brought to you by Spencer Callahan Injury Lawyers. LA 21-12681. Offices in Baton Rouge. Hanny time. Hanny time. A daily look at sports from our resident historian. Your sports break during your lunch break. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. Here's Charles Hannegriff.
And a pleasant good afternoon. Welcome to Hanny Time 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Charles Hannegriff along with Mario Jerez and Jacob Beck. Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media with us here in about 15 minutes. We'll do some Saints draft stuff with him. We are 1 week away from the NFL draft. Saints with the 29th pick, and lots of speculation about what's going to happen with all the quarterbacks in the first round. We'll talk with Chris about that. Bottom of the hour, Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. The LSU spring game is this Saturday. And speaking of spring games, Brian Kelly meeting with the media for the final time since or before the spring game today. It's been a very long and quiet spring, and that's okay on both fronts. First of all, quiet springs are very good. Other than Jamar Cain taking a job with Denver about halfway through this thing, there hasn't been a whole lot of what you would call newsy stuff, and newsy stuff in spring is almost always bad. So that's a good thing. You never hear, wow, this guy just, he won a position battle and it's locked up going into the fall. No, they say, oh, he's having a good spring and he's making some progress and he'll be a real contributor for us in the fall. That means he's having a good spring, and, you got to come back and do it, and don't have a bad summer. And of course, you never want any news about injury. So I think it's been a good spring from that standpoint. And the length was by design. It allows for more teaching during the non-practice portions of spring, so that's fine as well. By the way, we got a two-part spring football review and preview of the spring game on the Hannycast. Gordy has been out there a number of times for practice. I've been out for a couple, but he's been out for more, so kind of broke it down with him a little bit. And so if you want to get that, 1045ESPN.com, wherever you get podcasts. The Hannycast brought to you by Supreme Rice. First half is up. Second half will drop early part of the afternoon. Brian Kelly, every time I look at this, it's BK sound, and I just think that there's, not that he needs the money, but there's an NIL BK endorsement deal with him and Burger King if he wants it, because every time I look down and I see BK sound, just that damn jingle is in my head, because they're spending some money on the sports broadcast that I listen to. Anyway, BK, have it your way on how spring's going.
I thought the last 2 weeks were outstanding. So injury-free, practicing the right way, and then developing, the continuity that we needed with the transfers on defense and then the young players on offense. I think we hit all of those, and at the same time, I think we feel that we also, through our strength and conditioning program, we're a better football team from a standpoint of all of the returners as well.
Once upon a time, and what I mean by once upon a time is 20 years ago, probably less than 20 years ago, you would bring in the fall camp freshmen for the first time, and they would practice by themselves. They throw in some selected veterans, maybe some guys coming off some injuries or something. But when you had two-a-days, they would have the freshman practice in the morning, so they could kind of get indoctrinated into what you were doing because they had never been at a college football practice before. You throw through a few select veterans in, and then the varsity would come in in the afternoon. They did that as sort of an orientation because so many of these people were there for the first time, and this was before you got a big influx of early graduates that were in for spring. Now they don't have all of those luxuries of a ramp up. So when he says new guys, I immediately think to myself, the first day of spring, how many guys do you have out there who have never practiced with LSU before? Now, and a lot of them have practiced in college, but how many of them have never practiced at LSU before? Every transfer that's coming in has never practiced with LSU before. Every early entry has never practiced with LSU before. And that's a growing number. I mean, that number used to be really, really small. Now that number is really, really large. So having your culture, having your procedures in place, and having to orient all of the new guys, no small thing. If you can do it in an efficient manner, it's amazing the dividends that will play. Kelly also talked about position battles that they have had during the spring.
We have enough time to insert the players necessary into the roles that will have competitive opportunities for such, right? I think we've talked about the defensive line. I still think that there's room for competitive battles in the secondary. I think there's room for competitive battles on the offensive line. I think there's competitive battles at running back. So I just think that we're in a pretty good position this year compared to last year, where I thought last year there was much more work going into the opener against Florida State than there will be going into Florida State this year.
And I'm with him on all that. The secondary is probably the most up in the air. I mean, you've got a lot of new faces at corner. And some of them, like Deuce Chestnut, isn't there this spring, but if he wasn't a two-time All-ACC guy to come to LSU to not play. You figure that he is certainly going to play. And Zy Alexander had other opportunities to go elsewhere from Southeastern because of what he had accomplished there. And Jovian Toviano is as high a recruit as there was maybe on the board, and that's before you get to a returner like LaTerrence Wells. Any of these guys that have come in that have experience somewhere else or just have not played a whole bunch here, they are all in the mix. And I don't know that has really sorted itself out. We'll get Mike's thoughts on that a little bit later on. But J.K. Johnson's another. All of these guys are coming in with experience from somewhere else. Denver Harris, who's at the top, who's in the middle, who's at the bottom, I don't think any of that has been settled for sure, although they've got a little bit better of an idea with it. At running back, most of the reps have been taken by pretty much Trey Holly and Noah Kane. Everybody else is either out with injuries or has been out with injuries, or Emory's out with academics. So you don't have a full idea of that pecking order either. And with the offensive line, I think we know that it's going to be a pretty active competition between Charles Turner and Marlon Martinez at center. I would say all the way up to the last scrimmage, probably. It was a big relief, I think, to a lot of LSU fans, or should have been, last week when Marlon Martinez said, hey, I'm coming back. Because even Brian Kelly had speculated, listen, he may not come back. He may, at second portal window, he may leave. Well, he says he's not. Good. Hope that he's had a good spring. I think everybody knows that Zaylen Hurd is going to be a big factor when he gets here in the spring on that offensive line. Is going to push to do exactly what Emory Jones and Will Campbell did, which is start as a true freshman. Does he get there, for the opener the way Campbell did, or just a couple of games in the way Jones does, or is he just that key guy? If somebody gets hurt, is he the sixth man? Is he the next guy up? Don't know. Lots of position battles. I did want to hear what he had to say about Mason Smith, because it was such a welcome sight earlier this week when Smith got back out on the practice field early.
Yeah, but it's just not something that is worth the risk. He's in a position where, he can do a lot of the, virtually all of the drill work. But to put him into a spring game, it just doesn't, there's no advantage, from that perspective. So we'll give him more time to get his leg stronger and to the point where, his first contact will be, in August. And I think that's probably the prudent thing.
I should have set that clip up better. It was in response to a question of would he play in the spring game, which I'm sure you got it later in the clip. No, he's not, and shouldn't. Just the mere fact that he's out there is a wonderful thing. And maybe I'm just a little bit jaded over the last couple of weeks with guys being hurt and being out a long time, maybe longer than they should. So maybe I'm a little bit more giddy about this than I should be. It's just a defensive lineman going through some drills in spring. It's not going to tilt the balance of power in college football, but I liked it. I think the guy's going to be a really, really good player this fall. I was expecting him to break out last year, and if he doesn't have the unfortunate injury against Florida State, I think he does. So I thought it was really good news. Finally, a change, of course, on special teams. We heard from John Jancic earlier this week. This is BK's final words before the spring game on special teams.
There's just a lot more involvement than a singular person. It's Coach Jancic's, responsibility to coordinate it, but, Lester Erb is involved quite a bit, as well as Coach Denbrock and Coach House are very much involved. And I think we're all taking that approach, that the biggest difference is I think our players feel us. I think they feel this kind of everybody's involved in special teams. And because of it, it just changes the way they see it. It's just not like a one-man, show, and I got one guy that I got to impress. Everybody's got eyes on special teams, and I think it just changes the sense of urgency.
So if Anderson can come in and return punts, that's going to be a big sigh of relief for everybody, because that was a huge problem for LSU a year ago. The kickoff return game is not something that I spend a ton of time talking about, because the rules have changed to the point, and the kickers are so good now to where so many of these are just touchbacks, and you're just starting without a return anyway. So that's not something that I'm overly concerned with. The protection issues that plagued LSU early in the season last year were largely gone by the time the season got to the midway point. So now you're stuck with now that brings you back to coverage, kick coverage. And Gordy said something last year while we were doing one of the podcasts, and he repeated again on the one we did earlier this week, that when you look at and Gordy spent his career on special teams, he is immersed in that stuff. Okay, this is where he eats. He says, "Man, look, I look on the punt and kickoff return, punt and kickoff teams last year. I see a bunch of offensive guys. All of the guys on defense that you put on these coverages that go down and tackle for a living, we're all hurt. I mean, there's so many of those guys were hurt last year, and it's like, do you really want to risk Harold Perkins on the kickoff team? Okay, so now instead of a lot of backup wide receivers who can all run, but are not really known for tackling, what I just named you half a dozen defensive backs. They can't all start. Okay, how many of these guys are going to be important members of the coverage teams? And how many of these guys, listen, they all want to start. Denver Harris wants to start. Zy Alexander wants to start. Deuce Chestnut wants to start. All of these guys want to start. I understand that. They can't all start. So can you get some of these guys on the kickoff teams, the punt coverage teams, whatever, and really improve your coverage? One of the guys that he mentioned on the podcast that has turned some heads is a freshman linebacker, Whit Weeks. He'll line up and hit you. Well, at 220 pounds, he can run. Well, there's a guy. Turnover in personnel on special teams, I think, is going to be pretty significant from what you saw covering kicks last year to covering kicks this year. regardless of who the coach is. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll switch our attention for the moment. We're going to get back to LSU football at the bottom of the hour. When we come back, it's NFL Draft and the Saints with Chris Rosvoglu. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Bayou Ford has $2,000 off MSRP plus 2.9% APR for 84 months on new 22 Ford Expeditions. And all new Bayou Ford vehicles come with a 1 million mile warranty. The crew at Bayou Ford is going to do right by you.
For over a century, local broadcasting has evolved with the needs of the community. We move past the stigmas of opinion journalism and bring the most relevant news online, on air, and on the go. You have trusted us with your news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Trust us to keep moving with you. Text TB to 52886 and tell Congress local broadcasting is here to stay.
Hi, I'm Brandon Landry, founder and CEO of Walker.
Hi, my name is Dr. Craig Green.
This is Ryan Terrio with HUDCORoofing.com.
Hey, it's Matt Moscona. No matter how big your commercial roofing job, HUDCO can help.
My patients come to me because they trust that I can get the job done at a high level. Ryan Terrio and Richard Tilley have the same level of trust when it comes to roofing.
If you have a roofing issue, call HUDCO Roofing.
Give us a call, 364-1007, and we'll come to your house and give you a free inspection.
Clash of the Cooks Jambalaya Showdown is back.
Join us on Saturday, April 22nd
at the Ochsner Medical Complex at The Grove. We've got cooking teams of pros and joes serving up their best jambalaya and Cajun Creole dishes, all while helping raise dough for local families battling cancer. Bring the whole family for great food, live tunes, and good times. Clash of the Cooks Jambalaya Showdown presented by Ochsner.
Saturday, April 22nd at lunchtime. Help us paddle it forward. For tickets and more information, go to clashofthecooks.com.
All right.
Hey there, little buddy. What's the matter?
What's the matter? My windows, siding, and my door. That's what's the matter.
Relief Windows can fix all that. I got you. Pop, pop. What's up?
Oh my gosh, look.
Curb appeal. That's a good-looking neighborhood. ReliefWindows.com.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time again. It's heating up. Your boat's getting ready to come out and spend all summer on the water. It's time to take your boat to the next level with front-to-back boat service, where if you want an incredible custom speaker install, it's going to blow people away in the water, that's there for you. You want an HD sonar where you can see the fish under the water before you cast, beat all your friends, that's there for you at front-to-back boat service. So don't put it off. We got the parts in right now. Get them now before they go back on back order. Front-to-back boat service.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-20.
On Fridays, OTB. Give you a little Ole Miss scouting report as Jay Johnson's Tigers head to Oxford. Plus, one more day before the spring game. What should you be watching for? Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Remember, you can always get the show on demand, 1045ESPN.com. Joining us now from Boot Crew Media covering the New Orleans Saints, our friend Chris Rosvoglu. Chris, a week out to the draft. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting next 7 days or so for the Saints, that's for sure.
You know, I just got asked a question in our Bayou Ford chat about do you think the draft coverage is oversaturated? I'm like, probably, but I'm a geek for this stuff. Outside of the actual competition on the field, the NFL draft is my favorite sporting thing of the year. My favorite non-game activity of the year is the NFL draft. I think the strategy of roster building is something that's always really interested me. So probably it is, but I still kind of geek out over this stuff. A week out, there's a lot of chatter, maybe not at the actual top of the draft, where Bryce Young seems to be the consensus going to Carolina Panthers. But once you get past that, you're talking about how many quarterbacks are going to go in which order, and if the Houston Texans have soured on taking a quarterback, period. What's your best read a week out as to how those top 5 picks are going to shake out?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, I thought for the longest time we were entering kind of Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud 1 and 2, maybe it was interchangeable. But as it goes along, it seems like Bryce Young's a shoo-in to be the next quarterback of the Panthers. And I think where it gets interesting is that the 2 and 3 spots, those are 2 teams now that I don't expect to take a quarterback at this point. I think the Texans really wanted Bryce Young, and once it got out that he was going to probably go to the Panthers, that's why you're hearing all this talk now about them not really being committed to just taking any quarterback at the 2 spot. So I think for those 2 teams right there, I'd imagine if they stay put, one of those teams will be taking Will Anderson from Alabama, just such a talented player there. But I could see one of them trading out. And I think if they trade out, you could see a team like Indy move up a couple of spots, maybe a team like the Raiders move up from 7 and take C.J. Stroud. So I'd imagine regardless of which teams are picking, I kind of feel good about Bryce Young, Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud definitely being in the top 5 for sure. And then it comes down to preference. I think Seattle at 5 has an interesting decision to make. I've seen a lot of people talk about Jalen Carter and Tyree Wilson. But at the same time, it would be fascinating to see them go Anthony Richardson and maybe let him develop under Geno Smith. But right now, I don't think we're going to get the huge quarterback run in the top 5 that was talked about a couple weeks ago. But I would be shocked if C.J. Stroud still doesn't make the top 5. And I wouldn't be shocked if either Indy or Vegas moves up.
Chris, with the unbelievable demand for quarterbacks and some teams that really need them, if the Texans have decided that they don't want a quarterback at 2, isn't there going to be a lot of attractive offers to move down? If maybe it's Tennessee, maybe it's Vegas, maybe it's the Colts just to move down a couple of spots, but with this undeniable need for quarterbacks, if those quarterbacks don't go in the top couple of picks, I'm going to be really after Bryce Young we're talking about, because there's going to be huge offers and they're going to be able to get some of these defenders in the middle part of the top 10 as long as they trade out of it for a team that wants a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of why this whole situation makes a lot of sense for Houston right now. Yes, they need a young quarterback. We totally understand that, but they can't just marry themselves to the idea of take any quarterback. And to that point, you bring in a young defensive mind like DeMeco Ryans. If you can trade out of 2, and let's say they fall back to 7 with Vegas, or even like you mentioned, Tennessee to 11, they can still get a young, talented defensive prospect. They still have pick number 12, so they can go with an offensive player and a defensive player in round 1, accumulate a bunch of day 2 picks if they want, and that ammo they can then use next year. If, let's say, they have their eyes on Caleb Williams or Drake May, they can make that push that they need to get that young quarterback in there. So I think they're sitting in a pretty good spot right now. You know, no one's going to have huge expectations on them in terms of the win-loss column next year, but they can add a lot of young talent after they did last draft. And I think DeMeco and this front office have some interesting decisions to make, but it seems like they're in a situation where either they can get that young quarterback and give their franchise some type of injection of life, or you can beef up the defense and give yourself some hope that maybe one of those lottery tickets next year belongs to Houston.
A week ago, which seems like a lot longer than that, the Cardinals were entertaining a bunch of trade offers, and it seemed like the target for those teams was Anthony Richardson, the quarterback from Florida. But that was when we thought that C.J. Stroud was going second. Earlier this week, the odds changed really dramatically to favor Will Levis being the second quarterback taken. To me, there's 4 guys in this first round that you can put a wide range on. Levis is one, Richardson is another one, and then the other 2 are non-quarterbacks that I'll get to in a second. Who do you think is going to be the second quarterback taken in this draft?
It's weird because when those odds start coming out and everything shifts, someone knows something. And I still feel like for Levis this whole time, he's been really connected to Indy. I mean, even yesterday, he met with the Patriots, and that's kind of fascinating considering they're at 14 and they have Mac Jones. And I don't know, maybe they think about moving up. But I still somewhat feel like it'll be C.J. Stroud. I think that people will, at the end of the day, go look at the Georgia tape and see a quarterback that thrived against a really talented defense and actually uses athleticism. And that's something for C.J. Stroud that I'd love to see more, him taking advantage of those natural-born gifts. So I'm still leaning C.J. Stroud. I feel like a team like maybe Vegas moves up and gets him. But, for you talking about Will Levis, this is a guy at this point where I'd be shocked if he makes it out of the top 7 just because of all the smoke surrounding his name right now. I
may look really dumb with this prediction in 2 years, but I'd take C.J. Stroud first. I'd take him before I'd take Bryce Young. That's just me. I have very real concerns about Bryce Young's ability to absorb the hits at his size in the NFL, but that's for them to take. I would take C.J. Stroud. The other 2 players that I think have got this wide range, Chris, Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas, and Jackson Smith-Njigba from the wide receiver from Ohio State. Robinson's going to be the first running back off the board, and Smith-Njigba is almost certainly going to be the first wide receiver off the board. I've seen projections anywhere from the back end of the top 10 all the way to the end of the first round. You have an opinion on these 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, for starters with Bijan Robinson, it's so fascinating to me because I've seen people kind of talk about how he'd be a great fit with Philly with the 10th pick, which, ironically is the one that the Saints previously owned. And for me, I just don't think that's how Philly really does business in that matter. I think a running back at 10 would kind of be a luxury pick for a team that can just go with a backfield by committee approach. But there's no doubt in my mind, I think he's one of the 5 to 7 best prospects in this draft, but I still struggle to see him going in that top 15 range. And I think for Bijan, where he probably ends up falling is maybe to 21 with a team like the Chargers, or even a little bit later if a team like Buffalo wants to trade up, add a running back to their backfield and kind of get dynamic there. So I still kind of anticipate him somewhere in the 20s, but to your point, first running back off the board for sure. As for Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's such an interesting player because I know that people can have concerns about the hamstring injury and whatnot, but you can't deny that he was the most productive wide receiver in 2021 for a group that also included Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, 2 guys that shined immediately in the NFL. And I think for him, I'm looking at teams like Houston with that 12th pick. I just think that they need to upgrade at wide receiver. They recently got rid of Brandon Cooks. That group is just lacking explosive talent right now. He would fit that bill, and I think he's the type of receiver that would fit well there. But if other teams are looking at it, maybe Green Bay at 15, even New England at 14, I think he would be a technician in the slot for them and do well. But I'm thinking 12 would kind of be the highest point for JSN, and I think he's definitely worthy of a top 15, top 18 pick.
Let's talk about the Saints. All the way down at 29, it is much more difficult to kind of put together a bullpen of available guys that you know are going to be there, fit a need, fit what the Saints want. But if you had to pick 3 or 4 guys that you think, okay, this is what the Saints are going to be sitting on, maybe 3 or 4 players that they really like, of which maybe 2, 3, if they're lucky, are going to be on the board at 29.
Yeah, I think for some that keeps getting mentioned, and I feel good about at least one of these 2 being on the board between Pitt defensive lineman Kalijah Cansey and then Michigan defensive lineman Mazi Smith. Mazi Smith, I think, should be there. I know that Kansas City's a team that's had a lot of interest in him, so luckily for the Saints, if he's still there and they like him, they'll have the chance to snag him before Kansas City does. Another player that I think, Saints fans wouldn't necessarily love the pick if it happens, but there is some sense to be made. The Saints have had interest in Osiris Torrance, the offensive lineman from Florida, for the last couple of months now. And I know that offensive guard right now doesn't seem like the most pressing need, but Andrews Pete's not going to be on the team after this season. Cesar Ruiz, if his 5th-year option doesn't get exercised, he's entering the final year of his rookie deal. So all of a sudden you start looking around and you're saying, well, there's no set offensive guard for the 2024 season. And I know it's not always about looking ahead, but for New Orleans, if the value's there, they've done this in the past before. They're not afraid to use a pick on a player who may need to redshirt his first year. I mean, even though it was injury-related, Trevor Penning barely played as a rookie. So I think that's another guy that I'd be looking at in that kind of range. And then if we're just sticking to BPA, two guys that I think would be fascinating for the Saints. If there's a run on defensive line, if there's a run on offensive linemen, if Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer are there and they want to upgrade at tight end, it's kind of hard to pass up guys that are such elite pass catchers and pretty much the total package at that position. That would kind of be towards the bottom of what I say would be the ideal situation for the Saints, but those are definitely some names to throw around.
Torrance is an interesting case. We know him because he played down in Lafayette, and LSU tried very hard to get him to transfer here, but he went to Florida with his old coach. And, my question with him, and I think it fits. I love what you're talking about as he moves in for Pete. My question would be, is he going to be there at 40? Because if they're spotlighting two or three guys at 29, what are the chances that at least one of those guys is still going to be there at 40? The draft's kind of a crazy thing. Like you talked about runs on certain positions. Give me odds on the possibility of Osiris Torrance being there for the Saints' second pick.
Well, see, that's something that I think the odds aren't that low. I actually know through tons of simulations and stuff, you'll see for the most part either the two guys that I mentioned, Torrance and then also Mozzie Smith, are guys that there are a lot of situations where they fall into that second round. And for New Orleans' case, I think that's what you mentioned is going to be fascinating for them because they could be in a spot where there could be two players at 29 that they really like, and they may have to just take that risk of, okay, we take one there on 29, maybe let's say they go defensive line. And if Torrance, who I believe is probably more likely to fall out of round one than, let's say, a defensive lineman, I think that you could look at pick 40 and say, all right, maybe we just move up a couple of spots. The Saints do have 8 draft picks. They have a lot in day 3 that I question if they'd actually be able to make the roster right now because we've seen in the past the Saints have taken guys on day 3 and it just doesn't work out because it's so tough to crack the 53-man roster. They could package that up, maybe move for 3-4 spots, and that might be enough. And if, let's say, they were to miss on Torrance, you could go with the TCU interior offensive lineman in Steve Avila, and I think he'd be another good fit there. So I'd say it's kind of 50-50 on Torrance right now. I've heard some people think it's first round, and I've also seen a lot say, all right, just kind of earlier in the second round. And if that's the case, New Orleans can jump up the board.
Chris, do me a favor. Don't tell anybody I said this, but if on the off chance, and it's a long shot but not impossible, that Bijan Robinson's on the board at 29, I might be rooting for the Saints to take him. Don't tell anybody I told you I'm okay taking a running back in the first round, but I might be rooting for that.
So the funny thing is, you look at the running back depth in this class, and I keep telling myself, round 3 is the perfect spot for the Saints to get someone. Maybe Zach Evans.
It is.
Maybe a Zach Charbonnet. But I do agree with you. If you're sitting at 29 and Bijan Robinson's there, I just think it comes down to BPA. And you can't tell me that New Orleans can pass up, let's say, maybe the 7th or 10th best prospect in the draft just because they have other needs. I think Bijan would come in immediately and just shine. And I think for New Orleans, you can make the argument for just this season, if they had Bijan Robinson and Alvin miss his time, when you come back, you're going to be running that football. And I think they would really present a lot of challenges for teams in terms of stopping what would be a 3-headed attack in the backfield. So I don't think he makes it to 29, but if he makes it to 29, I would have a really tough time passing him up. He's just such a good talent, and it is a position of need.
We'll just keep that between us, but we're on the same page there for sure. Chris Rosvoglu from Boot Crew Media, thanks so much. We'll be talking with you next week. We're getting ready for the draft. Thanks a lot.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break. We'll come back, talk with Mike Scarborough about the upcoming spring game for LSU. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
I want to tell you about Big Mike's because I like ball crawfish, and they got ball crawfish every day, starting at 11 o'clock, 7 days a week at Big Mike's. You want to come in for happy hours from 3 until 7, Monday through Friday, and all day on Sunday. The 40 TVs throughout the bar and the restaurant, you're going to be able to watch, baseball, you can watch golf, you can watch NASCAR, whatever it is. The NBA playoffs are on right now. You can watch all of those over at Big Mike's. Remember, they are available for your private parties. They've got multiple size party rooms that they can rent out to you. Take care of whatever it is, whatever size group that you have. And if you'd rather have it at your home, they can do off-site catering for you, take all the work out of it for you. With the Denham Springs Hall of Fame right in the front of the restaurant, you know it's the Denham Springs staple. Big Mike's Jitterbug lessons. Join Mario tonight at 6 o'clock. Big Mike's, we're kind of a big deal.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge. Follow us on Twitter at 1045ESPN to cast your vote in the Citizens Bank and Trust Poll of the Day. Vote daily inside Off the Bench, Hanny Time, Hunt Palmer. And after further review, Citizens Bank and Trust brings you the Poll of the Day via Twitter at 1045ESPN.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
The world's leaders in obesity research, obesity medicine, and obesity science are right here.
We're doing something that no one's ever done, or trying to answer a question that no one's ever asked before.
Pennington is a real jewel when it comes to research.
We are finding the solutions to the world's worst chronic disease, which is obesity. Louisiana needs Pennington Biomedical.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Hi, I'm Brandon Landry, founder and CEO of Water.
Hi, my name is Dr. Craig Green.
This is Ryan Terrio with HUDCORoofing.com.
Hey, it's Matt Moscona. No matter how big your commercial roofing job, HUDCO can help.
My patients come to me because they trust that I can get the job done at a high level. Ryan Terrio and Richard Tilley have the same level of trust when it comes to roofing.
If you have a roofing issue, call HUDCO Roofing.
Give us a call, 364-1007, and we'll come to your house and give you a free inspection.
Gulf Coast Bank and Trust is giving our customers the power to bank anywhere, anytime during this challenging event. And we're right there with you. Our mobile banking.
Hey, it's on. Join me for Thursday's Hunt Palmer Show. Joe Healy from D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team talking Southeastern Conference, and we'll turn our attention to the LSU football spring game. Hunt Palmer Show, 1 to 3 weekdays, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Annegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
LSU spring game is on Saturday. Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com, has been out all spring long watching this group, and we'll have a chance to get a longer look on Saturday. Mike, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, glad to be with you, Charlie.
All right. Spring games, by their general nature, are not the most exciting, tension-filled football that we watch, but we get a good, kind of wide-angle lens at the team before they break, and get ready for off-season workouts in the summer. What are you looking for Saturday? What will catch most of your attention?
Yeah, I going into this thing, if you said this one is going to, most of them are super boring. If you're going to say this one might be the most boring ever, I wouldn't argue against it. But I tend to think, look, it's more of a recruiting day in my mind, but I think I'm looking forward to see Trey Holly. I want to see, he's got 9 offensive linemen out there. How many plays does he let the first 7 go? And, of course, I think probably want to see some wide receiver DB one-on-one, which is something we haven't gotten to see. With all the access we were afforded last spring in August, because of how thin they are, we didn't get full practices this spring. I don't know if that's going to go the way of the dodo bird, or if that'll come back once he's got a healthier roster and he's able to go 1s versus 2s. Are we going to, we get full practices spring of 24, or is that just an introductory deal that we got last year?
I don't know. All I know is that Trey Holly must be tired by now, because he's approaching Corey Wales' record for spring football carries. That's an old dated joke. But Mike, the corners in particular are of interest to me because there's so many of them, and they're not all there yet. And I can make cases for the resumes of an awful lot of these guys. So how they sort out when LSU takes a field against Florida State is very interesting to me. I know we're not going to have complete answers after Saturday, but if you had to kind of put them in order right now, what would understanding that Chestnut hasn't been here the entire spring for squad work, what kind of order would you put them in?
Well, I think that one of the concerns is it sure has been quiet with Denver Harris. Where is he at? Is he in the doghouse? We don't know, but there's been some rumblings out there. What's true, what's not. I mean, I'd like to hear some really positive things about him from Brian Kelly at some point. But Zy Alexander, I think, is probably the guy that's going to be maybe your headliner because of Chestnut not being there. Toviano, J.K. Johnson, some of these guys going forward. So when you start thinking about what does LSU do after this weekend, and with the remaining couple of weeks of the portal, are they going to be out there trying to hit that for not only corners but maybe even another safety? I think those two positions are still concerning.
Well, they've got numbers. So if it was a bunch of guys, they just didn't have very many numbers, I would be, in the secondary I'm talking about, I would be more concerned. I expect that there'll be some guys that step up. I don't know who, and I don't know that we're going to know who after Saturday either.
We haven't heard, one of the guys, I had someone in Lafayette grill me every time I turn around. I ask him about Terrence Welch. Well, it sure has been quiet on him. Is he a guy that, when you start saying what's the over and under on how many of the current roster kids for LSU end up putting their name in the portal next week, is it 3, 4? There's been some rumblings that he might be a kid. Haven't heard Brian Kelly say his name once this spring, but someone recalls it. I stand corrected.
Okay, yeah, and then that's another one of those guys. He's got some of the physical characteristics that Cordell Flott had when he got here. We've talked about that a little bit. So we'll see if he develops, if he gets some time. You mentioned recruiting, so that's right in your wheelhouse. How and I've heard that a few times now this spring game, and even Brian Kelly talked about it this morning about using the spring game to recruit. So is there something different this year, or is they changing the approach on what they're doing for spring? Why is this a bigger recruiting weekend this year than it usually is?
I don't know. There's a bigger recruiting than some of the other weekends that they've already had in spring. I mean, they've had a steady flow of great unofficial Saturdays and junior days or whatever you want to call them. I mean, I like to know how many pounds of crawfish they've served up in total this spring. And then you've got guys that show up during the week and attend practices or visit on days when it's not. So, but they've got a nice group of visitors. And, of course, the big news of the day is going to be Deshaun McBride from Denham, who's going to announce his commitment. He'll be on campus. So 3 guesses as to where he's going to end up committing. And so he's a fantastic safety. He's got all the measurables and a great athlete and track kid. So LSU's 24 class is coming along in a big way. But you're going to have a nice mixture of 24 through 25, 26 The big-time running back from Opelousas, Ford, will be there for 25. Brett Bordelon, Lamar Brown, the big OL, DL. He's listed as a DL by a lot of people from U-High. A lot of people wonder if he might end up being an offensive lineman by the end of his career at U-High, Lamar Brown. So, and then the number one guy that a lot of people say is the number one player in the state, Dominic McKinley from Acadiana, is going to be there. So, 5-star defensive lineman and a specimen that everybody's in high pursuit of. And a few months ago, it looked like LSU was behind a bit, and now it looks like they pulled out in front and are maybe starting to distance themselves with him.
All right, Mike, before we let you go, I feel like I should ask you the obligatory quarterback question. That'll be the talk on Monday because everybody watches the quarterbacks. I'm more interested in some of the other position battles, but I understand the interest in the quarterbacks. What's your read? It's been a very quiet spring for that as well. Your read on the quarterbacks and what kind of spring they've had?
Well, if I put together every clip that we filmed of practice from day one through the last day, all our footage is almost identical because we've gotten the same little section of what Joe Sloan does with them each time we've been out there. What Brian Kelly said today about Daniels being 210 pounds plus is accurate. I think Ricky Collins looks great physically. Nussmeier's got bigger and stronger. We can see that. But none of us at this point have seen them throwing deep balls with corners and safeties in live action. So that's something that I'm looking forward to on Saturday. But it's get ready. As the guy who's hosting the show, I mentioned the other day that I thought Jaden Daniels would be the guy that he brings the SEC football media days, and then all the Nussmeier people get mad at you. So it's going to be a back and forth.
They're wanting to bring the backup quarterback to SEC media days, really?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
give them my. If you're not comfortable telling those people that they're stupid, give them my number. I'll tell them. You don't bring the backup quarterback to SEC media days. What's the matter with you? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, next year, you bring him next year. When he's a starter, bring him then. Come on.
Exactly.
Backup quarterback to SEC. Give me a break. Mike, what's coming up on TigerBait.com?
Yeah, we got a lot on the site. We got an ongoing list of those recruiting visitors. We got Kelly's presser from earlier today. And I got a couple of 2 or 3 recruiting updates that we're about to post here this afternoon. So $1 you can get on Tiger Bait and try us out.
See you on Saturday, my friend. Good to have you.
All right, Charlie. Talk to you. Thanks.
All right, we appreciate it. Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com. We'll come back, take some of your questions out of the Bayou Ford chat. This is Hanny Time, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time.
Infinity of Baton Rouge. If you got a vehicle that you don't know what it's worth, maybe you want to trade it in, maybe you want to sell it. Go to Infinity of Baton Rouge. You get a quote on it inside of 15 minutes. Once they give you a quote on it, there's no pressure to buy. You can trade it in on another vehicle. You can sell it outright for cash, or you can just take the information and do with it what you will. It's just part of the service at Infinity of Baton Rouge. But I highly recommend the Certified Pre-Owned program. I've told you a number of times. We've been in this program for last three vehicles now, and the benefits are just so great because you get that first year of maintenance taken care of. You get that roadside assistance. It's so, it gives you that peace of mind where if you're having problems on the road, you can make a call, get it taken care of. And when you bring your vehicle in for maintenance, you're going to get a complimentary car when you get into the certified program. Man, I love that. I don't like sitting around waiting for my car to be serviced. I don't like having to, ask for other transportation. You'll be able to get along with your day. They're going to be able, with their large inventory, to get you a price, a vehicle with the age, mileage requirements that are satisfactory to you. And because they've been through this long and arduous process on the inspections, you're going to get a 100,000-mile warranty for those that pass to the code as well. Acura and Infinity of Baton Rouge on Airline Highway in Baton Rouge.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Hello, Samantha, dear, I hope you're feeling fine. And it won't be long until I'm with you all the time. But until then, I spend my money up right down on my last dime. Come on, in Baton Rouge.
Saturday, April 22nd at the Oshner Medical Complex at The Grove. We've got cooking teams of pros and joes serving up their best jambalaya and Cajun Creole dishes, all while helping raise dough for local families battling cancer. Bring the whole family for great food, live tunes, and good times. Clash of the Cooks, Jambalaya Showdown, presented by Oshner. Saturday, April 22nd at lunchtime. Help us paddle it forward. For tickets and more information, go to clashofthecooks.com. All right.
Hey there, little buddy. What's the matter?
What's the matter? My windows, siding, and my door. That's what's the matter.
Relief Windows can fix all that. I got you. Pop, pop. What's up?
Oh my gosh, look!
Curb appeal. That's a good-looking neighborhood. ReliefWindows.com.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time again. It's heating up. Your boat's getting ready to come out and spend all summer on the water. It's time to take your boat to the next level with front-to-back boat service, where if you want an incredible custom speaker install, it's going to blow people away in the water, that's there for you. You want an HD sonar where you can see the fish under the water before you cast, beat all your friends, that's there for you at front-to-back boat service. So don't put it off. We got the parts in right now. Get them now before they go back on back order. Front-to-back boat service.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Moscona inviting you to join us for Thursday's AFR, presented by the Aesthetic Medicine and Anti-Aging Clinics of Louisiana. Brian Kelly meets with the media after the Tigers' final practice of spring, and we chat with Kendall Rogers. Join us 3 to 6, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is Hanny Time with Charles Hannegriff on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Biggest topic in the chat that I think we need to address is the A's moving to Las Vegas. That the announcement of the team moving didn't come this morning, but the announcement that the A's had bought land in Las Vegas, and the commissioner, as incompetent as he is at other things, actually backed this. So, they got Major League Baseball's a blessing on this, so it's just a matter of when now. Listen, I'm more of a traditionalist. I don't like franchises moving around unless it's absolutely necessary, okay? I was on pins and needles after Katrina that the Saints would move to San Antonio. So I know what the potential impact is on a city. And I'm certainly not for the irresponsible building and tearing down of now billion-dollar stadiums at the expense of taxpayers. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons have lived more places than me in the last 30 years, okay? So I understand if Oakland can't afford to build, or at least the infrastructure, or come to terms with the team on a new stadium, but they can't continue to play there. It's not so much a stadium as it's termites holding hands. The bathrooms are overflowing. There's a possum living in the press box, okay? This is embarrassing, all right? The Oakland A's have the same problem that the Oakland Raiders had, which is they have an owner that can't afford to own a professional franchise. And they've demonstrated that over and over again. I mean, it's through Billy Bean's scouting or his unorthodox, everybody saw Moneyball, I guess, his unorthodox approach. And they're, in a lot of cases, superior scouting that they were able to maintain competitiveness, okay? But their owner can't afford to own a Major League Baseball team. Mark Davis can't afford to own an NFL team if Las Vegas wouldn't have bailed him out, and that's what they're getting here. The city of Oakland is simply not willing to make those upgrades, and that's fine. If the mayor of Oakland, who I don't know, but I read the quote, said, "Listen, we're not going to be bid against. We're not going to just be in negotiations so the Raiders can get a better, or the A's can get a better price in Las Vegas." That's fine. But this is the market now. The market is dictating that this is what you have to do to have a professional franchise. And Vegas is as attractive as it gets. They're going to build them a brand new stadium. They're going to have a built-in fan base there, and they're going to have a built-in tourism base to help with the fan base. It's going to be an influx of cash for an owner who can't afford to stay where he is. Now, would they rather him sell it to somebody who has unlimited funds, build a stadium in Oakland and keep it there? Yeah. But the Warriors moved across the bay. The Raiders moved, and the Raiders had, as much tradition as anybody in Oakland, but, they couldn't afford to stay there. The Davis family had to move them twice. Cash grab, maybe, but they had to move them. So the A's are going to move. And Vegas is the most attractive market because there's no longer the stigma that you can't have a professional franchise there in a gambling town. Well, the Golden Knights have been a raging success. The Raiders are in way better shape than they were in Oakland. And as soon as LeBron retires, they're going to put an expansion team in the NBA, and they're going to put it in Vegas, and LeBron's going to own it. So the baseball team is going to probably beat them there by 2 or 3 years. Progress, it is. Either you can afford to play ball or you can't. And the Oakland A's can't afford to play ball. They just can't. Thanks to everybody for participating. Stay tuned for Hunt Palmer on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Each year, Guarantee Media hosts a radiothon to benefit Dreams Come True, the local organization that grants dreams to Louisiana kids suffering life-threatening illnesses and their families. We've interviewed these incredible kids, and their stories warm our hearts. And none of it would be possible